Hi everyone, thanks Becky. Yes, I'm Amelia and I apologise in advance for any interruptions we may get. So I've got small people running around, but hopefully they can be entertained for the next hour and we can get through this interruption free. I think Becky touched on a lot of the key points just as an intro to myself. So yeah, worked in tech my whole career, but I have had many different roles, and there's a point in the talk today I'll bring some of those to life for you. I'm always really passionate about helping people understand the different roles that you can have in technology without coming through maybe a developer career path. I've worked in technology my whole career, like I've said, but I've never written a formal line of code, but I've still had a great career path regardless of the route that I took coming into it. I fell into tech at universities. I'll bring to life the degrees that I did and how that led me into a career in technology, which I definitely wouldn't have foreseen in my younger years. And some of my kind of passions in the workspace. So as I mentioned, I've got 2 small children, 2 young girls. They may make an appearance or not today, but it just makes me really passionate when I think of them and them starting their career, just making sure that should technology be an industry that they choose to come and work in, that those opportunities are available to them, and just making sure that there are, we reduce the barriers to working in the technology industry for all, regardless of kind of education route and key things like that. Kirsten?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Kirsten. So I've worked in a variety of different roles, program project lead more recently, but also have a background as a BA specialising in process improvement. So I've worked on business change projects and tech projects and programs that are a combination of the two. I very much switched to a career in tech. I did a degree in Arabic, of all the sort of weird and wonderful subjects you can study, and just sort of found myself in ending up in tech. So there's no right or wrong way to get into a career in tech. I'm also very passionate about diversity and inclusion in tech, and currently part of the working group at Codurance on our diversity and inclusion strategy. And my role is Agile Delivery Manager. So I'm a billable role for our consultancy firm, and I work with clients to help make projects successful and support the team to be successful in delivering.
Cool, thanks Kirsten. So we'll get into the depths of the talk shortly. Really what Kirsten and I would love for you to go away with today is to understand the role around what does a project manager do, maybe what are the key skills that you have personally that would enable you to do that role, that are transferable from other roles as well. Like I say, we'll bring to life a little bit. Kirsten and I have got very different routes into our careers today, even though I've been a project manager prior to this current role. Obviously, Kirsten is in that role right now, but we've had different routes and experiences to get there, to really just bring to life that there are routes for everyone should they choose this as a career path. Kirsten's got some great hints and tips on finding your first kind of project management role or moving into that space, should any of the things in the talk really resonate with you as your next maybe career move. And then there'll be lots of time at the end, I'm sure, for questions and answers if anything bubbles up. So here, I'm just going to really bring to life, what does a project manager do? I'm conscious we've got quite a diverse audience today. Some of you might be more familiar with the name or the term than others. If you come away from the talk today knowing what a project manager does, I always say that you'll be doing much better than my immediate family and friends, that whatever role I have in tech, they never seem to quite understand what I do. So let's hope we can bring this to life for you, and then you'll be doing much better than what my husband normally does when I talk about my day job. But the key role of a project manager, and it's interesting, I might start with this actually. Kirsten and I were talking about this talk today, and we reflected on how there's probably quite a few different names and roles out there in the industry that all come back to this similar kind of core role that we're going to talk about today. So I think the point I'm going to be made is don't get hung up. You hear the term project manager, you hear the term delivery manager, you hear the term agile delivery manager. Were there any others, Kirsten, we mentioned?
Technical project manager, digital project manager, all sort of variations on a theme.
You get these variations, but I think the talk today, don't get me wrong, some of those titles might come with like one or two things that are kind of specifically different than the other, and there might be a reason for that specific title, and sometimes they won't. They're just easily transferable. Delivery manager to agile delivery manager to, you know, project manager to technical project manager. But I think the essence of what we'll talk about today is very much comes under the bracket of all of those titles. So just to make that clear. So as a project manager, which was a role I was in for probably around 7 years of my 16-year career, you work as a key point of contact for your team. So if you think of the main purpose of the team that you're working in as a project manager is to build an IT system, in this example and this talk and the career that I've had, it was always to build an IT system. So what you often find is you get given the idea or the brief of what that IT system has to do. And the project manager is fundamental, is building the team up around you that will enable you to deliver that IT system for whoever your project stakeholders are. So what you find, you'll be quite active in bringing the people together with the right skill set and roles. So you might be active in getting the engineers assigned to your team. There might be some testers you need on the team, a business analyst or a product owner type person, depending on the organization and what that specific delivery model is. So when you've got your team assigned to you, you understand you make sure that as a team you understand the scope. I'm hoping I've not froze. It said my internet was a bit unstable, so sorry. You understand the size and scope of the IT system you're going to build, and you then become a key point of contact for all those stakeholders in the organization you're working in, who you're building that IT system for. And you are very much the key point of contact for all the communication in terms of once the project starts, when it's in progress, keeping those stakeholders informed in terms of how long the proposed project is going to take, how much it's going to cost, any of the big ticket issues that are coming up. So communication is key to that. And you work with the team every day, so you're very much working with them to understand how they are performing. Have they got everything they need to build the system, in hand? Have they got access to the right technology stack, to the right systems? Have they got the right kit themselves? Logistically, are they set up to deliver? So I was in a project management role this time last year when COVID kind of hit us quite hard in the UK, and we all had to start. I used to work in the office with my team all sat around me, which was very nice and made a lot of the communication very easy for me. But if you imagine March last year, I get told as a project manager, right, your team can't come back into the office tomorrow, we're working remotely. I immediately have to think logistically. So if we all kind of plug in our laptops at home, is that enough for the engineers? Have they still got access to everything they need to access the systems, to write the code, to build the system? Fortunately for us as a team, and what I think a lot of the trend was in IT, because we're used to remote working at times, to make that shift to remote working all the time, it wasn't a massive impact for us as a team per se. However, we saw other repercussions in other areas in terms of trying to manage the comms, from us not being in the room to us all being remote. But I think that's probably the nature of a separate talk, so I won't go into that now. When you're working with the team, are you doing your daily stand-ups? You're making sure you understand how the build is going. You very much, when problems come to light, you are the very much an enabler to help resolve those problems for the team. You'll try and point them in the right direction to speak to someone if they need to speak to someone in a different team to help them resolve that issue. Or you might go and try and, have that conversation yourself to unblock it. When problems are particularly big and out of your control as a team, you might escalate that problem, speak to someone else in a senior leadership position or another team to help you unblock that if you can't do it yourselves. And it's very much the way that as a project manager, your key role in that team is to make sure the rest of the team members are set up to be successful every single day. Everyone in your team brings a slightly different key skill into that team to help you deliver that IT project to the date and to the level of value that you've promised to your stakeholders and customers. So your job is to make sure they're performing. And there are key things that you do as a project manager to kind of help manage that progress. You have certain things, they're called burn-up charts, and it's really just making sure that, on certain cycles of time, like maybe every fortnight, you're exactly where you needed to be in terms of moving forward with that development. So at times it can be quite challenging. I'm not going to kind of hopefully sugarcoat it too much with this perfect world of just, like I said, resolving problems is a key element to the role. But I think the reward you get from putting the time and the energy into that space is you get recognition back from your development team. They actually notice the difference that they make in their role in terms of writing excellent code because of the work that you're putting in as a project manager to remove those obstacles for them, to make sure that they're set up and they can bring them their best selves and their best work into the workplace every day. Also, the management of budgets, as I mentioned, cost is a key element as well. It's making sure that you've got the right people, you're burning the right amount of money, you're moving forward at the right pace for the team to land whatever the milestone is for the delivery in time. So if we have a look at the skills, so hopefully that's brought to life a little bit about what you do. So this is more, Kirsten and I were trying to pull out as a person, what kind of personality type in the workplace might suit some of those aspects we spoke about. So you're managing stakeholders, so you must enjoy the space and being able to communicate with different people. Sometimes these people you might not work with every day, so it's understanding different parts of an organization. For Kirsten and I, for example, we work, Codurance is a consultancy. So we as a business go into other companies to build technology systems for them. So you need to be, Kirsten is a superstar communicator because she has to be quite efficient at going in and being able to talk to new people all the time and knowing who to talk to in that organization to keep the right people informed. So it only kind of like in a consultancy brings that skill to the forefront. So teamwork is a key element to the role. We've mentioned that you support the team in being their best selves and doing their best work. So you really need to kind of bring the team together to really be listening for what they need and how you can help them in order to kind of hit the deliverables that you've set as part of that project. You need to be really good at influencing. So we've mentioned that sometimes things do go wrong. There was many like a PowerPoint deck that I've written where I've said, this has gone wrong. These are now our options, A, B, or C, and they might have a price tag against each one. They might have a different deliverable date, and it would be my role as the project manager to bring those options to life. And if I personally felt there was the best one for the client, the customers and the team, I'd say my preference would be this and why. So it's about helping people to make informed decisions where they need to. The problem solving, I've mentioned a few times, it's using a logical and a pragmatic approach to problem solving, knowing that as a project manager, people will come to you with their problems, and it's having the ability and the skill set to have it work through with the team what potential options could be in these instances. And, you know, sometimes you won't have the answers yourselves, and you don't need to. They can be very technical problems, and your role as a project manager will be just the knowledge of, well, who do I need in the room, or the now virtual room, to help us come up with some options or an agreed way forward. And your role in that will be bringing people together, making sure the discussion is to the point about the problem at hand, and then keeping everyone informed of kind of where you land post those discussions. And project managers tend to be pretty organized people, in the sense that, you know, the coordination of people, having everyone in the right place at the right time, so a logistic. So it used to be lots of meeting room planning to kind of have certain conversations at certain points of the project with the right people. Now it's a case of just making sure everyone's got the right Zoom link, etc., in their calendar, so you're using people's time effectively to make sure there's the different communication flowing where you need to. So to kind of like wrap that up really for an average day in the life of a PM, and to really bring that together, it's my average week as a project manager. I do the stand-ups with the team every morning, which is an agile practice where you spend 15 minutes maximum with the team, understanding if they've got any blockers to what they're trying to achieve every day, and then taking those blockers and working with whoever has that to try and help them resolve it. Then you know, one-to-ones with the team, so that team management, that communication aspect, just making sure that everyone has what they need to perform, and also helping people with their own career development as well, is a space I've been really active in as a project manager. Keeping the client, the customers up to date, how things are progressing, how much money maybe are you spending, you know, what's going right, what's going wrong, and what you're going to do about it. Just that constant communication, but it's always knowing the level of comms that you need to maybe certain different stakeholder groups in your project is quite a skill as well, is that making sure that you're not over communicating too much detail to, you know, the senior leaders in the client when they need very short summary of how it's progressing. So it's having the skill set to know the difference in the depth of the comms needed. And then, yeah, just putting in meetings. There's a lot of reoccurring meetings you need to make sure happen as a project manager, to make sure that the right people on the project are talking. But like I say, there are times when you just need to be bringing like a bespoke meeting, bringing the right people into a space together to discuss certain topics that are bubbling up on the project that just need immediate attention. And you'll be sending reports out on progress and other things like this. So very much when Kirsten and I had a terrible analogy of a project manager about me being a bit of a snow shovel, like always clearing the path to make sure the team that are delivering, you know, the IT system and coding it behind me and testing it are like have the clearest path possible, so they're least disruptive. Kirsten came up with a much better one, that as a project manager, you know, you're quite the conductor of the team. So you're just always making sure everyone is in exactly the right place at the right time to do what they need to do, to make that sweet music, but in our technical world, to kind of write the best code, should we say. So maybe that's the analogy I need to use going forward. As a PM, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't need to be in the depths of the technical knowledge. What you do need to do is kind of be organized and know the right people to bring together at the right time, and know how to kind of make the team as efficient as possible. There's some really headline things in there that speak to Kirsten and I when we think on our own experiences as a project manager. So my route into tech, I'm going to talk about, and then Kirsten will talk about hers. Like I say, they're quite different, and then Kirsten will pick up on some of the other key points of the talk. So yes, I feel like there's so many inspiring stories out there now for how people have found their current roles in tech. I've realized in hindsight, mine is really boring. I need to find a way to like jazz it up a bit. But yeah, I mean, I kind of did a business degree back in the early noughties, and I didn't quite understand or comprehend how heavily weighted. It was quite a new degree at the time. It had a very much of a technical underpinning, and it was all about how businesses were starting to kind of use technology, and the two were getting very intertwined, and you couldn't like pull the two apart. I was just kind of going more down a generic business route myself, didn't probably read the small print on the prospectus, knew that I wanted to go to Liverpool for the great nightlife, and here I am X years later with a career in tech. But maybe it was just divine timing and divine intervention. Loved the course, loved the theoretical element of technology and how it was supporting businesses as we move into this kind of more technology focused digital age. And then after I did my undergraduate in Liverpool, I did a master's because I was just so enjoying the learning in this space, that had a little bit more weighting of the technology. Just so, you know, I came out of the universities I went to and just had an appreciation for the language that was being used in the technology space. But like I say, wasn't in the depths of that developer engineering space, but it really lit me up. And I was offered a job on a graduate scheme as a business analyst. I'd never heard the term business analyst before. What I saw was a great salary and lots of student debt. And so I kind of went to London in the midst to start paying some of this off, and put me on a fantastic career path that I feel very, very blessed to have had. As a business analyst, this role is very much around, you are that conduit, you are that middle person between a technical team that I've mentioned and the business. So it's your role and responsibility on whatever project you're on to understand the problem that the technology system is trying to fix, or the business goal that technology system you're building is trying to enable. Really understand it. And with this, you do a lot of work in different markets, in different industries, and also as a role as a business analyst, it's understanding that marketplace that you're building the technology system in, because it can be influenced by that. Sometimes it can be influenced by what competitors are doing. For example, if you're in the kind of online retail space, which was where I spent some of my career. So absolutely blessed, really enjoyed that element of speccing out what the IT system had to do after the research or the analysis. And then I built on that and moved into the more project management space, because some of those key skills around the communication, the stakeholder alignment and interaction, my organization, my kind of team motivation, building cohesion skills. As a business analyst, they were seen. And when I worked for Vodafone, they said, have you ever thought about a role as a project manager? Because we feel you've got that internal skill set that was just intrinsic to me and could be redeployed in that role. And as a result, I became a project manager. It opened a few different doors in Vodafone. I took on the role of a portfolio manager that had greater breadth and where I managed multiple projects. And that's kind of given me the basis that I have today for my current role as regional director, where I get to do all of the great things that have kind of encapsulated my career today: the people management, the kind of sales element, going into different companies and understanding them, and the kind of management of projects when they are in flight in their technology build. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to stop there. I think that's all the key things. Kirsten's got lots of great things to say as well. Hopefully I've brought it to life a little bit, some of the key elements of the role. But yeah, Kirsten, I'm going to hand.
Okay. Thanks, Amelia. Okay, so I've had a very different route into tech, and hopefully that should give some encouragement to anyone who's listening, who wants to make a sort of a bigger change in terms of what they do as a career. So my background at school and university was foreign languages and music performance, and I had a total of 2 years of IT classes at school. So it was not a focus at my secondary school at all. So my IT skills have been entirely self-taught, basically, and I just fell into a career much later on. So I guess what I'm saying is there's absolutely no reason why what you studied should be any barrier to working in tech. It's really common to come across people who've done, quite different degrees. And also there's no reason why you shouldn't move into tech at a more senior level that is appropriate based on your professional experience and your transferable skills. You don't necessarily have to start at the bottom. And it's also never too late to change careers, as long as you understand what you enjoy. That would be my biggest tip, actually, finding something you enjoy, and if you don't enjoy it, try something else, and working out what you need to do to get there. So hopefully some of our tips this afternoon may give you some food for thought. So my first IT project happened completely by accident. I was working for a small charity in an organisational development role, and we decided we needed a website, so I volunteered. Basically, we didn't have anyone else in the charity who kind of felt comfortable around IT once one of my colleagues had left. So I managed I did the requirements as the business analyst. I managed the procurement in terms of bringing in an external design agency to work with us. I project managed the project. I wrote a lot of the copy in conjunction with stakeholders, was heavily involved in testing. I got great experience, and I think the lesson there for me is that small organisations can be a great opportunity to try new things, and that's one of the reasons I've ended up at Codurance, because I recognise I enjoy playing a more strategic role, and I can get those opportunities in a smaller organisation where roles tend to be more narrowly focused in bigger organisations. The flip side of that is, in a bigger organisation, there are maybe a variety of roles and opportunities within that organisation, or to say move abroad. So there's pros and cons, but definitely it's worthwhile putting yourself forward for any opportunities that come up to get experience and develop your skills in new areas that are of interest to you. My next role was actually in a local authority in children's services, so quite a big change, and my job was to commission mental health and wellbeing services for families. Nothing to do with IT whatsoever, but I was doing a lot of contract management and supply relationship management, and that's absolutely fundamental to IT projects, because quite often you will be working with partners on an implementation. So those skills and that sort of commercial side of things, and understanding contracts, and meeting the criteria that are set out in those contracts in terms of customer acceptance of whatever you've delivered as the project, is fundamental, and that's one of the sort of my areas of sort of transferable skills that has been really valuable to me. So definitely really do think about everything you've done, and pull out those transferable skills, and think about why those make you particularly well suited for whatever role or organisation you're going for. I found an internal opportunity, having worked in children's services. The budget cuts came in 2010, and suddenly we needed to start a load of projects to save vast amounts of money. And I initially started working as a business analyst, working around process improvement, so making our processes more effective, more efficient. I got sent into a lot of different services in the local authority. There's a real breadth of services, and basically reviewed those services in conjunction with the staff who worked in those areas. And I found I increasingly came to specialise in tech, in projects that had some kind of technology element to it. And again, it was there was an opportunity there for me, because I felt fairly comfortable and was interested in those projects. And maybe some of my colleagues were a little bit more nervous in those areas, or didn't feel as confident and didn't put themselves forward for those opportunities. So I've worked as in that local authority. I worked as a business analyst. Then I made a switch to project management, and then ultimately program management. But I think I definitely recommend trying out different roles, and seeing what you enjoy, where your strengths lie, and in looking for roles that really play to your strengths, because it's quite stressful if you're in a role. I find that you feel really kind of exposes your weaknesses. So you definitely want to work with your strengths. Interestingly, as a project manager, I'm not the most organized person. I will admit that. There are people who are way better at that than me, but I do have a lot of skills in other areas. For example, around stakeholder relationship management, around problem solving, coaching teams, getting the best out of the team that more than compensate, and I'm good enough in terms of my organizational skills. I'm quite often complimented in that area, and it makes me chuckle because I think that's not one of my core strengths, but yeah, it's whether you're good enough and you actually enjoy using those skills. I think there are also lots of different sectors, companies, project types you can work on. And one of the things I love about working for a consultancy firm is I love that variety and that uncertainty, and I really thrive on that. I love the surprise of what my next client is going to be and what exactly I'm going to do for them. So at the moment, I'm working for a client who are in InfoSec, and I'm delivering an infrastructure as code project. So there's real variety there. Yeah, that's great too. So that's my route into tech. So I think if we just move to the next slide, Amelia, we've got some headlines in terms of getting into to tech project management for you. So the first one is around visualizing where you want to be, what that looks like, and understanding how you can get there. But it's really important to believe in yourself and focus on what's important to you. So for me, that's a very strong focus on values and organizational culture, and that's what drew me to Codurance as an employer. But it might be that you have an interest in specific technologies, for example, and that might influence you. Also thinking about those strengths and skills that you already have and how those are relevant to project management. So Amelia's already spoken about some of the key transferable skills that are relevant in that area, but maybe also identifying any additional skills that you need to develop to become more well-rounded. So in terms of helping you understand sort of where your strengths and areas for improvement are, job adverts are great, sort of role specifications, picking out what the common skills are, the experience they're looking for, also any specific qualifications. So in the public sector, Prince 2 seems to be the preferred qualification in terms of project management. Certified Scrum Master is another key one in terms of the Agile space. There are lots of different project management qualifications out there, but picking out ones which seem to be popular, and also any specific technologies that they're looking for. So cloud experience, for example, is really popular at the moment. InfoSec as well with COVID seems to be becoming quite sought after, and stuff in data and analytics experience in those areas is quite sought after. You can also look at the profiles of experienced project managers on LinkedIn and see what they've done, what skills they're listing, and what their experience is, and reach out to those people as well. The next, I think my next recommendation would be around increasing your knowledge of project management and methodologies. There tends to be quite a heavy focus on process in project management, although I have to say it shouldn't be process at the expense of outcomes. So an example I gave to Amelia the other day is you can have the most beautiful RAID log in terms of meticulously documenting all your risks and issues, but if you can't unblock them for the team or help the team to unblock them so that they can deliver, then it's kind of pointless that you've got it all perfectly documented. It's about outcomes at the end of the day, which ultimately is about having a system that's going to deliver some kind of business benefit that's been identified. You know, the company has a goal it's trying to achieve, and it believes delivering that IT system is going to help it get there. In terms of methodologies, Prince 2 I've already mentioned is a really popular one. Scrum is another really popular one in terms of the Agile family. MOOCs are a great opportunity nowadays for increasing your knowledge in all sorts of areas. They're free and chargeable options. there, but definitely the quality is really quite fantastic, given that there's so much available for free online now. And also attending meetups. There's a fabulous tech community in Manchester, and there's loads and loads of activity in terms of tech meetups. It's dipped a little bit with COVID, but there's still stuff going on online. So I definitely recommend checking out Meetup and events to see what you can tap into, and you'll meet some really quite inspiring people and get to know people in the tech community in Manchester that way. The next tip would be around just getting experience working on projects. So even if you're not in a project management role at the moment, put yourself forward to work on any projects that are going on where you work, because it doesn't matter what your job title was at the end of the day. If you've got experience of using those skills, of performing those duties that a project manager does, that's still perfectly valid, I feel. Amelia had a tip actually, which is a great one, which is around finding a coach or mentor to help you as well. So someone who's perhaps already in that role and can help you on your journey there. And I think finally, talking through your ideas with someone else, finding someone who you trust, who can motivate and inspire you to go after your goals. I think back to last August, I was made redundant, and I had a conversation with a recruiter who told me I would never get a role in the private sector, because I'd always worked in the public and third sectors, although with private sector partners on projects. And I decided not to listen to him because I knew I wanted to make a transition into the private sector. And I was successful inside of a month. So yeah, really do think about finding people who are gonna motivate and inspire you. Okay, so I think those are sort of the key tips that Amelia and I have come up with in terms of getting into project management. So on our final slide, we've got some tips around finding your first project management role. So I guess it depends where you are in your career in terms of how appropriate some of these tips may or may not be to you. The first one is really to register on LinkedIn, but because a lot of recruiters will find you, companies will find you through LinkedIn. That's how I was found by Codurance. Codurance actually reached out to me. So it's really important nowadays, and also making sure you've added all your skills, because if you add the skills on LinkedIn, then you'll find job adverts that are relevant. You'll be approached by people because they can see you've got what they're looking for, the skills that are most important to them. So think about those skills that are relevant to project management that you have, and make sure you add them on your LinkedIn profile. And you can also join groups on LinkedIn, or follow companies you're interested in. So that's a great place to start. Now, if you're looking at junior level positions, you get lots of variety in job titles. The junior level roles tend to be called project coordinator, associate project manager, or assistant project manager, but there does tend to be a little bit of variety in some industries. If you see the term project manager on its own, that will mean a junior project manager. In the public sector, quite often that means a senior project manager. So you do have to sort of look at a little bit of the detail to see what level of responsibility they're looking for and what level of skills. Another option you've got these days is to consider apprenticeships. So you can do an apprenticeship in business analysis, you can do an apprenticeship in project management. I'm doing one myself at the moment, so I'm doing an MBA as part of a senior leader apprenticeship at Manchester Met. So I definitely recommend taking a look at apprenticeships. It is very, very applied, and that's what's particularly good about it. It brings together that sort of the academic side of doing a degree with actually applying that in work and evidencing that you've developed particular knowledge, skills and behaviour. So definitely check out opportunities that are there if you feel that you're missing having a qualification, but you want to do that whilst in work. there's absolutely no way I could have personally afforded an MBA if I hadn't had the opportunity to do it through an apprenticeship route. And I hadn't got the opportunity working in the public sector of doing an MBA funded by my employer, because the budgets just didn't exist anymore. Another tip in terms of finding your first project management role is definitely go for roles even if you don't tick all the boxes. A lot of people will sort of, you know, see one box that they maybe don't fully tick and sort of talk themselves out of going for it, but definitely put your best case forward in terms of what's special about you, the value you can add, why that is particularly relevant to that or employer, or you know, if you know anything about the projects that they're trying to do, and just go for it because you really don't know. And also making sure you sell those transferable skills. As I said previously, you don't necessarily need to start at the bottom, so look for what's kind of called more of a diagonal move, so moving sort of across and up at the same time. Definitely don't sell yourself short. And I think my final tip, and it's something I'm doing differently these days. I've read some of my old CVs and covering letters, and I sent myself to sleep. They were just absolutely awful, and really long, because quite often you'll find a person spec has got about sort of 30 items on it, and you're trying to meticulously cover everything off because you think, if I just miss something, I won't get through to an interview, I won't get that opportunity to actually meet the people who are hiring. But definitely do make sure your personality comes across in your CV and covering letter. You know, what's special about you, your USPs, why those are particularly relevant for that opportunity. You know, the things that interest you professionally, and why you'd enjoy working as a project manager, and what attracts you to that particular company. So yeah, I think those are our top tips. Do please feel free to reach out to either of us on LinkedIn or via our company website, and we're happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you so much for that. I love listening to your stories, because you come from different backgrounds and kind of the things that you've overcome. And I always love the way you talk about the fact that you were told that you'd never make that move, and a month later you were in the role that you wanted. And I just think that's such an important message to get across to everyone, that it is really, really possible.
Yeah.
So we have got a couple of questions in the chat. So Salik has put, what is a good way for a dev to move into a product owner or a project manager role?
Do you want to take it, Kirsten, or?
So I think first thing I would recommend is seeking out some of those sort of opportunities to take on responsibilities that align to a project management role. So getting some of that experience, maybe asking a project manager that you're working with as a dev to mentor you. I think the other thing that I might recommend, and this is an approach I took, was around qualifications. So I invested in Prince 2 initially as a qualification, and that helped sort of give me my confidence in terms of having knowledge in all the key areas as a project manager. So I think those would probably be my 2 tips. Amelia, is there anything you'd add?
The only thing I would add is make sure the right people know you want to make that move. I've had, when I wore my business analyst hat in ThoughtWorks, my previous company, there were a couple of people. There was one girl who I'm still very, very close with. She was making the move from dev to BA at the time, and the project she let the right people know, so when the right opportunity came up, they got us to pair together, and she would just shadow me on a lot of the business analyst work I was doing at that time. I think I see Ben on the call as well. It was a subject of a talk I was having the other day to the apprentices, like, people aren't mind readers. If you know where you want to take your career, and this was a bit of a lesson learned for me at the time. I used to be quite introverted when it came to my career development, and what I've learned over my own experience, it's amazing what things will happen for you if you just let people know. So to whoever asked the question, if you're in a company right now and you can think of a few people, whether it's your line manager, whether it's the people that manage the project management team, just let them know your intention. And even if things don't turn around quickly and you're doing all the good stuff Kirsten said, in the meantime, people will think of your name when an opportunity arises for you to do some shadowing or some pairing with a project manager. So just get the intention out there. Something I'm much more proactive at doing myself. When I want something to happen for me, I'll just start telling people like, oh, I really want to get into this. And it can be quite informal and nothing to come of it straight away. But it's amazing how over time you'll see that things will just start moving you in that direction as well.
Yeah, I'd add, I mean, on an annual basis, there's no reason why you should wait for sort of one opportunity a year. But if you're having PDRs, then a good manager will ask you what you're interested in, where you want to go. But raise anything, use that process to raise any ambitions you have. It may be that the opportunities are not there in your existing company, or you're so highly regarded in one role that they kind of want to keep you in that role. Or you've become pigeonholed as being good at in a particular role. So you may have to move outside of the company, but hopefully a good employer will see your value and want you to be happy and continuing to progress and to stay there.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got another question here in the chat from Lucy. So Lucy has a background in journalism. She's put, do you recommend that we get a qualification in something linked to business? She's also said, what are your emails? Because she missed them on that final slide as well.
Oh, that's fine. We can pop them in the chat box now. And
yeah.
Becky, you can always
share
with the. So do you need part of me is like, do it if there's a qualification you want to do for you. Don't do it because you think you should do it. I think that what Kirsten and I were really trying to help with in the talk is you will have so many transferable skills, Lucy, if it's a step into the project management or just more business space that you want to make. I definitely do the kind of mapping exercise that was kind of alluded to in the talk, in terms of you've got so many great core skills now that probably map to some of the things Kirsten and I have been talking about: communication, verbal, written, the understanding of target specific communication. So as a journalist, you'll know how many words you need to do to get a certain message across. All these kind of good things. Just take some time to reflect on what role you want to move into in the more business space and what you've already got, and don't let the fact that you're currently sat in one kind of industry stop you moving into another, because I find that sometimes industries are a bit irrelevant because you as a person have your own personal skill set that are so transferable. And yes, there's a few things you need to do to maybe get those doors to open in the industry or the business space that you're hoping to move into. But I'd do that first and foremost. If you feel that you want to be very active in the kind of project management, Scrum manager space, and you're called to do the kind of Scrum Master accreditation, do it by all means. It's a great qualification, but just make sure you're personally brought into it, because I think that will help you with that. That's just what came to mind for me. I don't know, Kirsten, if you think.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of person specs over the years that have said, they're looking for a degree in IT or business or relevant experience. So I think you'd be ticking the relevant experience box. There are roles in project management, working on certain phases of a project or types of projects where your skills will be particularly useful. So, for example, there's a stage, on a program called Transition, where you're readying the business stakeholders for that, whatever you're producing as part of that program going live. So there's a very heavy emphasis in terms of sort of business change manager roles, transition manager roles on stakeholders and communications. So there may be sort of ways in that actually really benefit your existing experience. I mean, I'd echo what Amelia says, that if you're going to go ahead and commit to a degree, you have to be it has to be something that interests you, because it's hard work, especially if you're doing it on top of work. I think for me, doing the MBA, the MBA is really well respected in the private sector, and it's also respected in terms of taking a step up into senior management positions. So it does really help with that. It also helps you in a general sense be much more well-rounded as a senior manager, because you're covering so many different subject areas in that qualification that that are relevant to stepping into more senior roles. So for example, you know, you're covering off leadership, managing and leading people, strategic and operations management, finance, marketing, sort of the global economic side of things. So it does make you more well-rounded as a senior leader, but I wouldn't say that that having a business qualification is necessary, but it's more an understanding that a project is there to achieve some kind of business value, to deliver, contribute towards business goals and objectives. So it's having that understanding more than anything that's important.
Yeah, that's a really great answer. And I'll just add to that, I have been a project manager in the past and I had no qualification that was relevant to it. I kind of fell into it. And it's just echoing what you guys say. There's so many transferable skills that you will have that work into that project manager role. So just always think about what you have got, because there's definitely opportunities there. We have got another couple of questions. So I'm going to try and run through them because we're coming towards the end of the session. Veronica's just asked, what were the names of the methodologies that you mentioned? So you had Prince, Scrum.
Okay. Yep. So Prince 2 is a project management methodology that is really popular globally. In fact, apparently there are a lot of opportunities in the Middle East, particularly UAE, with Prince 2. PMI is another sort of equivalent project management qualification. There's MSP2, which is more of a programs focus, managing successful programs. Basically, Axelos have kind of like a suite of complementary qualifications, which are around management of projects, programs, portfolios, risk, value. So that's one area to look out for. In terms of Agile, Scrum is a really popular methodology, so you can do Certified Scrum Master qualification. Also, SAFE is another one in the Agile space in terms of scaling Scrum at more of a sort of a program. It's scaling Agile at more of a program level. I'm trying to think if there are any other qualifications that I'd call out, but I think those are the main ones.
You can a book, because I spent a lot of my career in a waterfall environment, which aligns to Prince 2. And then when I left Vodafone, I went to work for ThoughtWorks, and Agile, which is probably a term that you may have come across now, is a whole different methodology to delivering IT systems. So I had to unlearn the previous 14 years of my career. But there's a really good book, The Agile Samurai. And it's a really well-written, really easy to digest book that introduces you to Agile kind of principles and ways of working and method. And it just takes all the nonsense away. And so if people are interested in learning a bit more in Agile delivery methods, the Agile Samurai, I can send you the link, Becky, as well. Yeah, if you follow up with this community. And I read that when I had to kind of unlearn the previous 14 years, and it was a really nice intro into kind of these new ways of working.
Yeah, there's also a Prince 2 Agile practitioner qualification you can do now that kind of brings together Prince 2 with how you tweak it in an Agile environment and some of those sort of practices that come from Agile. Amazing. So I definitely recommend that.
Thank you. I've got a question here for you, Amelia. So Bilal, I hope I pronounced that right, who said, you say it's not important to have technical knowledge, but the good organisation and skills, skills communication is more necessary. Why do you say that? Because,
don't get me wrong, it helps when I know, my VPN, from my SSL. You know, I learned these acronyms over the time, but I've never kind of been hands-on the tech. But it's not first and foremost to the role, because as a professional person, as individuals, if you're in this space, we all have the ability to kind of learn. And so if I go into a room, so like Kirsten said, every tech project I'm on is different. And as in a consultancy, it could be a wildly different organization. It could be an industry I've never worked in before. For example, I've never worked in the finance industry. So if my next project as a project manager was in the finance industry, I would have to spend time at the start of the project having someone explain to me what we're trying to achieve. And if people aren't explaining something to the level that I can understand it, then they're not explaining it well enough. To the fact you should always so why is the technology not important? It's because as long as you can understand what you're trying to achieve at a business and conceptual level, you don't need to know all the low level technical detail, because that is not your role. That is not the value you add to that project. It helps to understand it to a certain level of degree that you can articulate what we're trying to do and understand when the problems come in, what part of the kind of overall project point that it's impacting. Because I have people on the team that have that low level technical knowledge, that is their value. They come to the team and they have to understand all the tech, all the low level things about it. I need to understand it at a certain level. So when they say there's a problem with this part of the build, I understand it at a high level point of view. But it's not my responsibility to design the architecture or help troubleshoot when there's problems in a certain area. Like I say, I would bring people into the room, be like, we've got this problem, it's impacting this part of the system. And you will facilitate that conversation so people with that skill set can get to the bottom of it. Because there are some people in the technical space that kind of wouldn't enjoy the job that I do. It's like we all have our own value, we all get our own enjoyment and self-worth from the different roles. So I talk about cross-functional teams a lot, and that is about a team of people that all have different core skill sets, that all bring the different value to the team, and between us we achieve what we need to achieve with that IT build. So I think my main point was, as a project manager, don't panic that you don't know, the tech stack you're on to the nth degree. As long as you have the ability to understand it conceptually, your real value you bring is all those things that Kirsten and I have just spoke about for the last hour. Don't get me wrong, it helps when you have an appreciation and you learn stuff on the job, but just take the time to understand it conceptually, and everything else will come off the back of that. Did that help? Was that a helpful answer?
That's a really good answer. Yeah, that's a really good answer. So I'm just where we've got of time. We've just got one more question. So Hawa, again, apologies if I'm pronouncing these wrong. I work for a fintech company. I started in October. When do you think is the appropriate time to speak to them about my career development?
Now.
Okay, yeah, whenever your next one-to-one is, you should hopefully be having regular one-to-ones. I know Amelia's my manager at Codurance, and yeah, my first one-to-one, she invited me to have a think about where I wanted my career to go at Codurance and how she could support me. So a really great manager will be asking those questions, but yeah, I just say your next one-to-one, just initiate a conversation, and don't be shy about it.
Yeah, I think for me, it was one of the things that I mentioned in the apprenticeship talk about the things I've learned along the way. No one else is going to drive your career for you. No one else is going to drive it and take control of where it's going to go. And people aren't mind readers. So if it's all up in your head, people are so self-absorbed with their own selves, their own careers, that unless you are quite specific, and your line managers have responsibility to help you, but you kind of you have to help them help you. You have to let them know what your aspirations are with regard to the first question. You have to let them know what your aspirations are within your current role. So yeah, and it doesn't have to be it can be a nice informal conversation. Just start the conversation. If they're not bringing it up, bring it up yourself. in a way that feels natural and right for you, but it's yours to own. So don't wait for your manager to ask, because they might be waiting for you or have a million other things they're thinking about, and your career isn't always at the forefront. It should be in their mind, but you need to kind of bring it up sometimes a level in terms of their kind of mind's eye. But yeah, definitely own it for yourself. I'm a big believer in that now, after probably not doing that a few times and learning the hard way.
Absolutely. I think one of the things to think about as well with that is your manager might think you want to go in a different direction, so don't let someone else steer your career in a direction that you didn't want it to. As Amelia and Kirsten both said, you own that, take ownership of where you want to go, and let the other people help you get there.